Okay, we are live. What is going on, everybody in Facebook land? It is a glorious Wednesday, and I'm super excited because we have a very special guest today, the one, the only Jen Morilla. And I got to meet Jen in one of the coolest places. We were on an impact trip in Mexico helping refurbish a school. And was like one of the OG travel bloggers. Like, I don't know if everyone remembers 10 years ago, that was like a new thing. And Jen was absolutely crushing it and built an incredible business for herself while creating content around the world and supporting really impactful projects. And one of them was a project that I got to meet her on. And since then, Jen has gone on to do so many cool things. She's a TEDx speaker. She's been in the entrepreneurial space for over 10 years, and she's helped numerous women specifically, but men and women, grow their business, go beyond six figures. And one of the things that I think is going to be really cool in this conversation today, and we'll get to pick your brain and your zone of expertise, is this what we've titled this is like refining and amplifying someone's signature offer. So a lot of people here, and I think this will be applicable to some people who maybe are earlier on in their journey, but for someone who has an offer, they're looking to take it to the next level. They have a couple things. We are live. What is going on? Oops.
That was me.
My own. Okay, I was like, is that my own Facebook? And I'm
It
getting
was.
that.
I accidentally didn't even mean to click on it.
Well, cool. Good to know that we're for sure live.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jen, you have just a wealth of knowledge in the online business space, and specifically, I think on I think the clarifying the offer, scaling the offer, and I know you have some really secret sauce here on Evergreen. And so, basically, I'll give you the floor here, and maybe you can just share a little bit of like what led you to sort of specializing in like this one core signature offer? Like, how did you end up going from there? Because I know you've had so many different things that you've helped people with in their business.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here, Jake. I was excited to reconnect. Obviously, you have also changed so much in the industry, and from Jake, the TEDx speaker, to being such an email marketing guru now. I was like super happy to connect, and I was excited about this workshop. But I have led many lives. Many different lives, as you can relate as well. But the secret to my success and my client's success is when you focus on one signature product. And that's something that I preach about. I talk about in every single platform, any platform that you see me on, I talk about the one product and one funnel. You can have several funnels, but all roads lead to your one signature offer. And I think people have it backwards. They think, oh, I need to be known as someone who has all of these things. And they create this product suite. So they have several different products, and then they live launch and they do all these things. And it gets exhausting. Like, it gets really tiresome to consistently have to like create a product and sell it, and then have a certain container or sell a course, all these things. And it really depends on the type of business and the type of audience that you have. So there's two factors that I call into play when I'm helping somebody build their business model in a successful way. Number one, what is the overarching goal, right? What is the vision of who you want to be, what you want to create? What do you want to be known for? That question, like, I cannot tell you, my clients will spend weeks on that question. Like, I have to have a deadline for them. Usually give them like 2 or 3 weeks where I'm like, you need to give me an answer. Either we need to sit down and like go deep. I need to ask you deeper questions to be able to answer that one specific question. But that is the hard, out of all the questions I ask, that is the hardest. I can ask people how much their products are worth, how much they want to sell it for. But the moment I ask, what do you want to be known for? Everyone phrases. They're like, well, I'm really good at this. And I'm really, you could be really good at a lot of things. But what's the one thing that you want somebody to be like in a lineup and be like, oh, that's what Jake is really good at. Like, you're good at email marketing. Well, you can do a variety of things within email marketing, right? Like, I could do a variety of things within the online coaching business. I could do content, I could do marketing, I could do sales. I can absolutely do those things. My clients come to me, but the one thing that I'm really good at is creating or helping people create their signature offer. Because then once I know the vision of what you want to be known for, then it's like, okay, how do we build something that somebody could always go to you for? And then that becomes a lot easier for you to be the visionary in that authority, right? In an industry that is super saturated, how do you stand out the most? You stand out the most in being that one person and being an expert in that one thing, whatever it is that you sell. I don't care if you sell donuts and they're, strawberry flavored, and that's your specialty. Like, it is the one thing that you sell. It is the one thing you're really good at. it becomes a lot easier to market and sell your product once you define that.
Totally.
So, yeah.
So question for you. I mean, and that makes total sense to me. And like, you know, I could see even for myself in the last couple of months as I've been getting more clarity, but then for other people, like there's so many different options, right? And someone's like, I could do this, but I'm also good at this. I know this is like a process you take people through, so you can't necessarily answer like the big picture
Right.
right now, but like, is there one maybe tip or like something that you help people with to clarify, like, for me, at least in this moment, like I'm known as like email, maybe it could add content, but like, that's like the thing. So how can someone kind of get clear on that one thing?
Well, I think you just said it right there, right? Like, what's the one thing you want to be known for? You said email, and then secondary could be content for sure. People come to me for creating a signature offer and then building a brand, right? The secondary piece is the content. You can't build a brand without knowing how to do content, right? I'm not going to hire somebody who, for example, if I'm looking for a coach to help me with sales, I want her to have an understanding of how to build a product, because without a significant product that actually works, the sales isn't going to work. Anybody with a 2 cents and a brain understands that doesn't matter how good you are in sales. If what you have doesn't actually sell or create results, then you're just selling a pipe dream, right? So when you're looking for somebody in sales, you want to make sure they understand the dynamics of building a product and what that looks like, depending on the industry that you're in, right? I'm not going to hire an online business coach if I have an e-commerce product, right? Like, I want somebody who understands the e-commerce space. And so that's the first thing, right? Is getting crystal clear on what industry, what niche, and then answering that question of like, what do you ultimately want to be known for? I love doing content. Content is my favorite. I mean, I started as a freaking travel blogger. Like, the travel blogging, the writing side of me will never go away. It is literally one of my favorite things to do. When my team is like, we need to come up with a content strategy, or we need to do this for a client, like, I go all in. That's my zone of genius. I absolutely love that. But what I know to be good at is creating that signature offer and teaching people how to build that out. In my
Yeah.
business, what has scaled me to 500,000 and multiple six figures is having one product. Like, I had a mastermind that then turned into a 90-day accelerator, right? And it's the one thing that I sell. Yes, people could come in and they can, in my funnel, they'll get a course, $100 course, and it's entry point. And that's all customer journey and all of those things, right? And you could do a one-on-one and all, depending on where you're at in the business and based on your customer journey and where you are. But at the core, the people that I talk to would significantly do very well in my group program, right? It's the one thing that I sell, and I have that on rinse and repeat. And that's where it was back in 2022. I had my mastermind and I was live launching, and it was a 6-month mastermind, and it was doing great. I was making between $20,000 to $30,000 a month. I couldn't go past it. I was doing, like, I had one-on-one clients, and then I was launching other programs, and I was exhausted. And I remember getting to a place and I was just like, there has to be a better way. Like, energetically, I know what I'm good at. And doing these like live launches take a lot from me. And somebody had mentioned turning your mastermind evergreen. I was like, what's that? Like, what does that mean? And I remember I started doing some research and I was like, oh, there's something here. And then I found somebody who was able to help me. And I went from, $40,000 a month to $80,000 a month. And then that was 80, 100. And then that was just continuously skyrocketing from there. But that for me was a huge game changer, because I think it goes back to the two things, like, what do you want to be known for? And then the second piece is, what do you actually have the capacity for? I have people that are really good with memberships. Like, you put them in the one-on-one setting and they're terrible, right? But you put them in a group full of 100 people and they can make a room do jumping jacks 50 times. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're really good at. And so how do you play on those things? And I think that takes time. I think that takes experience, like you getting to a place and like also understanding like what you really like. I think there's a lot of noise out there. And so putting on your blinders is key. It's very hard for entrepreneurs. I think we all have the shiny object syndrome. And so once something is working, we're like, oh my God, let's like do something else. And it's like, well, why don't you take a step back? Like, why don't you work what's already working? Let's just work harder. Build
Yes.
the foundation.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how, and it's funny because the same way like I work with people, the first step is we have to like really clarify like who they are, who they're serving. And it's kind of similar to what you do of like, okay, we have to
Yep.
figure out what is that one thing, because that
Yeah.
sets the foundation. And then I love what you shared there at the end. Like sometimes it's an iterative process. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but maybe the clarity is in the doing and just kind of moving. And it sounds like part of your sweet spot is really helping people like hone in on that specific thing.
Yeah.
And I would love to go deeper here because obviously when you were able to go from like 40 to 80K a month, that's like a, a quantum leap in your business. And maybe you
Yeah.
could talk a little bit about like the structure of your offer, right? So you talk about the secret sauce of like turning your mastermind evergreen. And I think that's something that I'm just like personally interested in, and B, a lot of other people, because I know in your journey, you had a big burnout, as many of us have. And so,
Mhm.
like, what's the ability? Basically, the question is like, how can we create leverage? You talked about the energetics and aligning the business with your energy. So, like, how can we? What are your insights onto like creating a structure that actually works with someone as opposed to just creating excess tons of work and where they don't have to trade their time for as much money, so to speak?
Okay, love
Loaded
that
question
question.
for you. Yeah.
It's such a good question though, because it's something that when I coach my clients, it doesn't matter if you're in a group container or one-on-one, just because I understand the 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 cause and effect and like how dangerous it could be, right? And I don't think we talk about it in industry. I said, number one, answering the question of what do you want to be known for, right? And number two, knowing yourself well enough to know what can you energetically expand on, right? Like what can you actually hold? Just because you have the strategy to get to $100,000 months doesn't mean you have the capacity to hold it. And I am talking at an energetic level because the more money you make, the more people you serve, right? So, in order for you to serve those people, what does that look like? Is it an online course? Is it a membership? Is it a high ticket program? Is it a group program? And then you have to put into the factors of like what's trending, like what is actually working for people, right? Like if you watch me for a long time, you'll hear me talk about how I think courses are dying. I think that if you create mini courses, like something that's less than $200, you're fine, but if you start creating $500,000, $2,000 courses, I think they're not really working, because unless you have a big audience, number one, and you have a super engaged audience. Because let's say you sell 10 courses, right? Great. You had, at a $2,000 cost or a $500 cost, great. You made a lot of money. But out of those 10 people, probably one person will complete the course. And then you can't have a proof of concept.
Yeah.
So in terms of the flywheel and whether or not what you say to, like, whether or not you're an expertise in something, whether you know how to achieve the result for your ideal client, you can't prove that, because in a course, you don't have the feedback, right? So I'm very hesitant about teaching people how to build an online course. It's easy. You could do it. It's not hard. My spiel is very much like build a high ticket group program or a high ticket impact program, which is anything over $1,500 that incorporates a little bit of both. I think we're in the era of discernment. I think people are buying with me more cautiousness. I was listening to a podcast the other
Totally.
day, and I'm curious to hear how you feel about this, because I was listening to a podcast the other day and I forgot the name. I'm going to send it to you when I find it in my roster, because I think you would really appreciate it. But they were talking about the sales journey and how we have like the very textbook, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, right? And depending on where your ideal client is, you're meeting them at certain touch points, right? Whether it's email marketing, content, lead magnet, all the different touch points. And they're saying that in 2025, that funnel has absolutely changed, because we are so inundated with content all the time that you have people who are start to follow you, right? And then maybe they'll listen to a podcast that you did up 6 months ago, and then they'll disappear from your feed. They won't see you for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden your content will pop up again, right? And then they'll go and binge your content, but then they'll go to your YouTube channel, and then they'll download a freebie, and then they'll maybe talking to their best friend, and they might have a problem with X, Y, and Z, and your name comes up, right? So they're calling it what did they say? It was like a chaotic funnel, because people aren't buying in the funnel anymore. They're buying because they've not only, it's more than just know, like, and trust. It's a deeper understanding. Like you have to be the expert. You have to be able to prove those results and be able to show that you know what you're talking about. And so I think that that process, the way in which somebody buys, is very important. And understanding that the times have changed. It's going to continue to change, especially with AI, especially with technology. How can you leverage that, right? From both a business owner, right, as a CEO of a company, and also keeping it true to your customers, right? Like having that customer journey feel authentic, being able to have those touch points. There's nothing like going into, Cartier, and whether you buy something or not, they give you a glass of champagne. Like you want that same customer service throughout your entire process. And I think that that's something that takes time. You have to learn how to do that. But it really depends on your business and what you're actually offering, right? Like you can't offer somebody a glass of champagne with a $500 product, but you should with a $5,000 product, right? And so I think that again, it goes back to the person, what you're selling, who you're selling it to, what the price, but there's so many factors.
Totally. And I totally agree about the courses. And I, like, from what I've seen that's like working or resonating, it's like, to your point, if a course is under $100, or it's on the cheaper side, and clearly like the perception of the value is so high that you're like, oh my gosh, for $97 I can get this. It's like obvious.
Right.
I'm curious in what you've seen working with your own clients and yourself in terms of like that structure, right? So like what would be, and maybe it's your own structure of your 90-day or like a client structure, how are you having them sustainably set up a business where they can get to that 20, 30, 40, 50K a month in a way that actually like isn't burning them the F out, and like a business that's like sustainable? Like I love how you even said that, like the energetics, you could actually like hold it and sustain it, not be like, I got up to 100K and now I'm crashing and I can't continue this.
Right. Yeah, well, that was the mistake that I did, right? Like I got to the 100K and I had a big team. My overhead was way too much. And I had way too many clients, and I had created multiple products to serve them. So the beautiful thing is that my mastermind was getting people to six figures, which is great, but then they wanted more support after the six figures. So I created a whole different container to be able to hold those women when that necessarily wasn't what I should have done, right? Me personally, I could have done a retreat. I also like when you hit, a $250,000 or $1 million, you don't necessarily need you don't need that much support as you think you do. Like what you need is like strong touch points. So a weekend retreat where we're sitting down and I'm looking at their entire funnel, I'm having a conversation with their OBMs, like their sales team, like we've actually built out a process and there's a structure, is probably more valuable than a 6-month container,
Yeah. And I think that speaks to why people's trust in courses is so low, because it's like information is more or less free these days, but it's okay, but what do I do with that? And can I get like tangible support to like actually create something?
Yeah. So what I teach is when you have this one signature offer, right? You can build before it or you can build after it, right? And that's a customer journey, that's a product suite, right? So ideally you have something that's mid-level, right? Between 2,000 and 5,000 in terms of product. In that there's touch points. You're getting them results. Once you've built the foundation for that, right? And you have your lead magnet that obviously draws people to apply, join the program. And within that funnel, you can have a low ticket $99 product or whatever, like that's totally fine, but it's within the product. You're not verbally creating content about your $99 product. Everything you create is to your signature product. Now, once that customer finishes that process, right? So in my case, in my program, it's called the Simplify, Amplify, Accelerator. In the 90 days, when you build your signature offer, you have the opportunity to stay inside that container for a monthly fee. So it's almost like an extension of a membership, but it's way more high ticket, right? So now the only way you can get into it is if you've done the program, right?
Gotcha.
So
So they paid you 2 to 5K, something in that range. You've delivered, and now you're offering an extension for them to continue getting support with you in a way that's like sustainable for yourself.
Right. And the vision of where I would take that would be some type of retreat or mastermind eventually, when they've gotten to a point that I know they're going to get to, because I've teach that, like I'm teaching them, they have all of the tools to get there. It's just a matter of time and where they are in their business, right? Where they're going to have a product where it's going to continuously grow and bring in leads. And then it's going to be like, okay, how do I step away from this? Right? How do I build a sales team so that I'm not doing the sales call? How do I build the operation so that I don't have to be on every single coaching call, right? And then in that container would be the next high level initiative, right? Which would be either mastermind or retreat or whatever it is we choose to do in the business there. But at the core, it's just focusing on that one product. No matter what happens, based on my ideal avatar and who I'm targeting, it's for this container. That makes
Totally.
sense?
It totally makes sense. And my question is like in that core offer that you have, what is like the structure of that? Is that like weekly calls? Is that, because I think that's a question a lot of people have, and even in the title of this, which is like, I think we said refine, right? Because I think a lot of people, at least that we're focusing on here, like they've started. They're not like brand new, but they're sort of stuck in like, okay, how do I build the structure for scale? So like
Yeah.
whether it's your business or your clients, like what is that? What have you seen work where it's like weekly calls plus XYZ, or like if you're picking up what I'm putting down there?
Yeah. So again, it depends on the goals of the company and the
Totally.
individual, right? Depends on what you're offering. Specifically in my business, it's 2 coaching calls a week,
Yep.
a monthly mindset call. But the way I frame this so that people understand is I'm creating something for long term. One of the differences, a big thing that I love when my clients say to me when they go through the curriculum is they'll come out and they'll be like, I wish somebody would have explained this to me when I first started. No matter what business you build, and listen, if anybody is listening right now, we have like one person. This is the most important nugget you will get on this call. Jake, you will also get this. Build a business in the way in which you will sell it. It doesn't matter if you sell it one day or not. I don't care about that. But if you start to build a business today with the idea and the intention of, I am going to sell this business, that means that you'll build a scalable business. So you'll build the foundation to eventually walk away from it. So when you're mapping out the product, when you're building out the product, don't think of it as a short-term investment. Oh, I just want to launch this 90-day program and make $100,000 on this launch. You want to be making $100,000 every month. In
Yeah.
order for you to get that, you need to get your clients results. That is so underrated. So many people don't do that. They're like, oh, but I can have 20 calls. Like, listen, they don't need 20 calls. They're not going to show up to 20 calls. What they need is a formula and a written and a concept that actually works and is implemented. So if you focus on the one product and you focus on getting your client results and delivering on those results, I guarantee you that you'll create a really kick-ass product. And eventually, over time, you will begin to scale and grow, depending on that price point. And obviously, the math has to math, right? Like you can't sell a $500 product. You want to sell something, like I said, between 2 to 5. And it's a long-term vision. While you're creating a name for yourself with your signature offer, you're getting on podcasts, you're doing workshops, you're getting on stages, you're building a brand, right? You're leveraging what you've created and your knowledge and expertise. And then you can obviously increase the price or build whatever it is that you're going to after that. But at the core of what you build, make sure you build something that gets people results, number one, because that's the most undervalued.
Shocker. Must
Yeah, right.
actually do what said thing does.
Exactly. And number two is that you're building a business that you can sell, that you can walk away from. And when you understand what that business model looks like, the way you begin to build is very different. And I've seen it. Like I've literally, the people in my program will jump in and they'll be like, I have this great idea. I'm like, yeah, great. Listen, go through the curriculum and then let's jump on a call. And the first thing they will do after, like literally the next day, they'll run through the lessons or whatever, the 4 modules that I have there. And they're just like, you drop the nugget. I was like, I know. That is mind blowing. Something so simple and so basic. And I was like, I wish somebody would have told me that from the very beginning, because I would have built something different.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I'd love to sort of just like repeat back to some of like the core things that I've taken thus far. And
Yeah.
it's cool. Obviously, I'm looking through this through the lens of both like my community and also like me personally. Because
Yeah.
right now I'm in a place where like I first like built my kind of core offer, but then with just the nature of what I've been doing, I'm like, okay, I've been sort of tailoring offers. Like I basically have a very high touch point service. And
Mhm.
the benefit to my clients is I'm like, yo, like this, I won't be doing what I'm doing now in a year because you are getting literally me as like an extension of your business. It's
Right.
great, super valuable. It's not scalable. But
Yeah.
I'm in the process, sort of like maybe a little bit towards the beginning, what we were talking about is like in working with all these people and understanding their businesses, it's like sort of building that clarity of like, okay, so like what could the actual signature offer be that is scalable, that is applicable to other people? Because it's certainly, I'm getting them results, no doubt, but it's
Right.
that structured question. Then once you do have that thing, in that 2 to 5, then it's creating the structure, like you said. Obviously, depending on whose business it is, whether it's a product or service, like we can't just apply this to like every single thing, but like sounds like a mixture of like group coaching, I think mindset, especially in any business
Yeah.
office,
Anything. Yeah.
is like so important. So important. And then I
Very.
love what you said too at the end there about thinking about building your business from the beginning with the intention to sell, even if you don't, because you can't sell a business unless it's systematized and you can pull yourself out. And
Right.
it reminds me, I read the book Built to Sell probably like 6 years ago, probably worth rereading it now, because I just see that I think having burned out myself, and like I really want to be strategic in building, like I'm not in a rush. I mean, yes, I want the thing and I want it now. And I would rather go slower in the sense of like building something that's sustainable than
Yeah.
trying to rush hit like 100K month and be like, well, shit, I have to do that all over again. And like systems in place, like
Yeah.
as you said, sharing from your own experience. So I'm curious too, and if there's anything there that you want to, expand upon, go for it. I'm also curious on like what maybe a little bit talk about that process, whether it was you going from like 40 to 80,
Mhm.
or you've seen your clients have that quantum leap. Like what is happening at that point in their business that is allowing for that growth, whether it's like changing the system itself, but like I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Great question. Well, it's the question that I was going to ask you as well, because I think that this is where you're at. Um, my clients, when they're at that stage where they understand, they have a proof of concept, you have an understanding that your one-on-one, whatever it is that you're doing one-on-one is working, and you're like, how do I make this scalable? At that point, you have to decide. And the deciding question is, what do you want the future of the business to go? So there's only so many ways you can take email marketing and what you do. So look at all of those ways in all of the capacities, which way feels aligned to you and the ultimate goal. Do you want to be a speaker? Do you want to teach other people how to do email marketing? Do you want to sell templates? Like there's so many ways you could take it, right? But at that point, you have to one, do the
Totally.
research, and then two, decide in what direction you want to go in. And then from there, it becomes a lot easier to build out a product that is scalable, depending on where you want to go and who you want to talk to. But at the
Totally.
core, that decision, yeah, 100%. And it's one of the hardest choices. It's one of the hardest choices that I had to make, because I went from having, a 10 to 12 person mastermind, and then, from there, building a 25 to 30 person mastermind, right? Literally 30 days later. And one of the things at my core that I never want any of my clients to feel, and it's a value that I hold in my business, is that I never want anybody to feel like a number. So I would cap it at 30. And then it doesn't matter if I hit 30, either I bring in a second cohort, but I never wanted more than 30 people in a room community, because I've been in big masterminds where it's been 40, 60 people and I'm just a number, right?
Just a
I
number.
understand.
Yeah.
And the person that I joined the mastermind for doesn't see my business, can't actually give me their time of day. And you're paying a lot of money to be in that container, right? So again, that goes back to the values, what you see to be true, what you want for yourself. But in order for me to get there, I had to make a choice about who I was targeting and who I wanted to work with, because there is a huge difference
Yeah.
between someone who can pay $10,000 to be in a mastermind, who's been in business for a while and understands where you're going to get them, versus someone who just started, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shifted. It's funny because when I started, and again, just like starting, right, is I started attracting a lot of people who were just starting out, which is great
Yeah.
and lovely. And that's not really ultimately who I wanted to serve. And even thinking through what you just shared there too, like as I'm thinking, I'm like, what are the parts that I can teach? And maybe for anyone listening, it's like, what are the things that you can maybe outsource that don't require time, but what are the special things that like do require time? So even as you were sharing that, I'm like, okay, wow, I could see a container where I'm giving sort of like templates or instructions for people on like what to write, how to set up their emails. But I think the genius zone that I offer people that maybe they're not aware of so much is like the strategy and the setup part of like a call where we're like, okay, kind of similar to what you were talking about earlier, depending on your business, product or service, like who, like all these things determine, like the context determines the content. So the
Yeah.
strategy determines the content. So that's why there's like not one size fits all. But if I can help someone on like a strategy call or whatever, then they have that equipment which can kind of plug and play their own unique stuff into some of these emails. And so I think that's something brilliant which came up for me when you shared that about like, okay, what's something, thinking through
Yeah.
the lens of like what's something that's actually scalable, where obviously at some point even I could bring someone else into that strategy and take myself out while keeping kind of the structure of the emails, the flows, teach people how to set it up so that
Yeah.
they can do that for themselves. Kind of like a done with you, sort of, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't add that as like a VIP option when you create a product or something like that. Like that's also another way to like increase your revenue, right? And that's, you know, what I teach
Yeah,
my clients is like you can create, like there's a skeleton, there's a model, and you can also offer a VIP option, which is a little bit higher. But when you create that, you have to think of what can I create that doesn't require so much of my time, but is something of very much a plug and play, still requires me in there, but not so much that it's taking up my entire day. And when you begin to shift like that, you'll see the difference. The foundation of any business is looking at everything that you do in your business and seeing what actually needs you to move the needle and what actually doesn't. So there are things in your business that you don't actually need to do, but need to get done, right? So bookkeeping, contracts with clients, invoice with clients, those things need to happen in order to move the business, but you don't necessarily need to be doing that, right? So making sure that you have something or an
totally.
place to be able to scale that is foundation, right? The next piece when you're building a program is getting, like you said, being able to step away. So we're at the stage in the container where we're bringing on, we're hiring a success manager to help us with the calls, right? So we're getting more people in, we're expanding on the amount of calls that we're going to do and the amount of one-on-ones, because it's a hybrid of one-on-one and group coaching. And these one-on-one calls, you'd be surprised too. Like I offer these one-on-one calls, and because these group calls are so potent, a lot of the people don't end up using their one-on-one calls. They're like, I get so much. The number one feedback I get is I get so much from the group calls. There's so much value. Anytime I do like a pop-up training or anything like that, that they're like, what, I don't need you one-on-one. Like literally you give so much on the calls, and that's what you want, right? Like you have the option, you can use it, and
Totally.
I'm happy to sit with you, whether that's myself or someone on my team. But at the core, like the product itself functions without me.
Yeah, and I love that you said that too, because I actually had a belief that like group calls aren't like, I'm like, I don't want the group call. But now being in a business mastermind, I'm like, oh shit, like other people's questions are either A, something that I'm unconsciously have, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I sort of was thinking that too. Or
Yeah.
B, bringing something just completely new to my attention. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even think about that. I just wanted to know, because you have your finger on the pulse and like I see what you're up to. You're so up to date with like content specifically, and like you just have your finger on the pulse. I was curious what, like you mentioned courses are no longer performing.
Yeah.
What do you see as like any potential opportunities or like kind of ways that things are changing or people could sort of like take
Oh,
advantage of?
you had mentioned AI. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so uh, there's the question, I mean, and you didn't ask this, but the question is no longer like, is AI going to take over? AI is 100% going to take over, right? I think we have to leverage it as business owners to as best as we possibly can. Do I think that you should do your copy via AI versus hiring a copywriter? No, I think that's a huge mistake, right? Because I mentioned earlier, there's a level of discernment when people are buying. So if your sales sounds too robot-y or too AI, you're not going to be different. What makes you different? What makes you different is the human aspect. So I say all of that to say, and I've been talking about this on LinkedIn a lot lately, personal branding. I think personal branding, we're in the digital economy. Like and we're seeing it now. It's 2025. Like the industrial economy, the digital economy, we're reaching a point where even if you work in corporate, even if you have a 9 to 5, there is a level of digital personal branding that you have to have that allows you to be an expert in what you offer someone. whether you're joining a corporation, whether you're running your own business, whatever the case is. And I think that's only going to get stronger. And the difference between using an AI software to write your sales copy is you and yourself and your own story, and what allows you to be an expert in what you have. Like you, Jake, you have so much experience, you've lived so many lives, you've done so many things. All of that has been able to tailor the person that you are, and the writer and the strategic person that you are around creating email marketing and like helping somebody in their business. And so I to answer your question in whole, I do think AI is helpful, but the way I promote AI is very much as a tool to get people out of procrastination. So if you're sitting in a way of like, oh, I don't have a content strategy and I'm just like overwhelmed, yeah, put it into AI, put the right prompt, like pull it, but then pull that information and tweak it to what's possible for you. But you've already set the foundation. Like you've already done the hard part, which is starting it. And I think that's how you can leverage it the most.
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree more. Like I use the same thing because,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, people use it and I welcome to use it. It's just, I think people don't always know how, which is where I feel like it positions me in a good space because
Yeah.
using it alone, but it's certainly great to just get ideas and things flowing for someone who is stuck.
Yeah.
And then Jen, I guess too, for anyone here who is like interested in working with you, can you share a little bit more about like exactly who you serve and how people can get in touch with you?
Amazing. Well, you could reach out to me via Facebook here or on Instagram. My name is Jennifer Morilla, Jennifer.Morilla. So you can shoot me a message there. Tell me you're coming from Jake's audience, and I'll send you over some freebies, some stuff to really get you to see what the possibilities are. But yeah, just reach out to me and say hello. I work with coaches, expert creatives, service providers, people who are really looking to build a brand around their intellectual property and what makes them the best at what they do.
Amazing. And yeah, especially on Instagram. I mean, I've seen you more on Instagram. Like your content is just insane and you totally walk the talk. So if anyone here is tuning in from YouTube or Facebook, like make sure to check out Jen on Instagram. And any parting words or last things that you want to leave people with in terms of everything we've covered today or something completely new?
Get out there and start talking about what makes you you, your story, your mission, why it is that you do what you do. Stop overthinking it. It's 2025. There's no excuse. There's literally no excuse. 75, 80% of the world has internet. Like you should be able to get on internet and just at the palm of your hands and just talk about what it is that makes you you. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Take messy action because as you said it, Jake, in the action, you get the answers.
Yes, I love that. And for anyone who has the block that AI is taking over and blah, 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 like I love what you shared there. Your humanness, your story, that's going to stand out more in this world of everything becoming robotized and whatnot. So Jen, you're the bomb. Thank you so much. It was so incredible. And everyone knows where to find you. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jake. Bye, guys.